is the consent agenda, item 2A. Do any board members have items they would like to pull from the consent agenda for individual consideration? Dr. Dowling?
Yes, 2E, just for discussion.
Okay, so do you want to pull it or you just like to discuss it?
I just have a
Okay,
comment.
great. Board members item, do you have any items you'd like to pull?
No.
Board member Clymer, do you have any items you'd like to pull?
I do not. Thank you.
I also do not have any items I'd like to pull, but board member Clymer, I don't think we could hear your response. Do you have any items you would like to pull?
I'm sorry, I do not have any items. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thank you. Okay, so we're not going to pull anything from the consent agenda, but Dr. Dowling has a question. Feel free to ask your question.
On the classified employment, I see that we just hired 15 on the process of hiring and 15 instructional assistants. Where are we with that? Is that to bring us up? Is this good? Is this not as many as we anticipated, or just where are we with that? These critical positions.
Correct. I think we're making progress in this area. So they've been working really hard, especially since the principals returned last week, and they've been hiring as quickly as they can. So this is actually a really good, good amount. So it's definitely cutting down, but there are still openings.
Okay. Does anybody know whether they're starting at $15 an hour, correct?
Yes,
Does anybody know whether that helped?
I think it did help. And we've been advertising it a lot with all of our publications. So I do believe that that helps. And tomorrow night, we're actually having a job fair in here
I saw that.
in the
5 to 7,
cafeteria.
right?
Mhm. So,
Okay, that was.
and I think it helped to bring people back to Dr. Dowling, like people that might have left us over the summer. I think people,
Well, yeah, I see that, the
Mhm.
rehires, yeah.
right?
Do we know if these were sped instructional positions, or would that be indicated on
I
here?
think it would have been indicated on there. I think
Okay.
these are the regular.
Yeah. All right,
Unless it was otherwise noted.
That's all I had.
Thank you.
Any other board member questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, I will move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second.
Having a first and a second, I will call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 3B, the approval of superintendent performance-based compensation goals for 2022, 2023, which will be presented by Superintendent Gunning.
Madam President, members of the governing board, from our study session, we came up with 5 goals. So just to revisit, under student success, foster academic excellence and innovation for all students. Under people, maintain high retention rate of employees, as well as grow and develop leadership at all levels. Under service, communicate effectively across our systems to ensure timely and consistent flow of information. And under finance and resource, consistently maintain all resources and facilities.
Thank you. I want to give a little bit of background as to how these goals were determined. We had a study session, a 4-hour study session that was also deemed a board retreat, although there wasn't much relaxing about it when you think of the word retreat. And the board members and Superintendent Gunning went through each of the potential goals. The goals that we establish and we choose and select for Superintendent Gunning's performance are based on our strategic plan that was adopted in 2019, and it's a 5-year plan, so it goes through the year 2024. There are a number of goals listed on there that are under each of our 4 pillars, and we selected one goal from each pillar, and then one goal has 2, or one pillar, I should say, has 2 goals. So we have 5 goals altogether. Each board member determined individually which goals were their top priority or which ones they wanted to see addressed. We discussed and came to an agreement and collaborated on, negotiated, if you will, on what those final goals should be, along with input from Superintendent Gunning. In this agenda item, we are just set to approve the goals. In the next agenda item, we will discuss some of the measures, which we did also discuss at the board retreat, but we will just ensure that we're on the same page with some of those measures as well. So a lot of time and effort went into determining these goals. And I will say the number one goal that Superintendent Gunning addressed, and we all will take our own parts in addressing, is to foster academic excellence and innovation for all students. That's going to be high on our priority list this year, as it is every year. Do any board members have any questions on the goals? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I motion to approve superintendent performance-based compensation goals for 22-23 school year as presented.
I will second. Having a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Superintendent Gunning. We will now move on to information and discussion items, which is to agenda item 4A, which is discussion of measures and actions as related to the approved performance-based compensation goals for 2022-2023. This will be presented by Superintendent Gunning, and board members, I'm sure, will have questions and input on this as well.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the governing board. Wanted to go through each of these measurements. I do have a couple edits, so if we can follow along and then need also just confirmation that we have them on documented correctly. So under student success, number one, which would be the state assessment. We want to look at outscoring the state by at least, we had 10%, but when we had our discussion the other day, I remember we talked about grouping it 3 through 5 and 6 through 8. So I need Brian to look at that to see if 10% is still the accurate amount. So that's, but looking at 3 through 5 and 6 through 8, outscoring or within the range of our peer districts, as well as a comparison of the West Valley school districts, as well as comparing us with the top performing districts in the state, which we don't have that data yet, so we don't really know kind of where we fall in that arena. And looking at number 2, this would be.
Can we just talk about number
sure.
1 first? There's a lot of information there. So I just want to clarify on this, because the data points we're looking at here is the state proficiency test, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So for each of those comparisons, we're looking at the state, we're looking at our peers, which are districts who are similar size and characteristics of us.
Correct.
We are looking at our West Valley neighboring schools. So that would be Avondale, Buckeye, the schools that are close to us surrounding. And then we're also going to choose out the top performing
School
elementary districts, or will we look at unified districts and only those grades?
I'm going to have him pull to see like, what does that look like when he runs it?
Okay.
Because there's some that I know come to the top of mind, but I think if it's like Tucson, which is a unified school district, I think that's one that we need to look at. So I think it would be, because we usually look at, even when we look at the peer districts, a lot of those peer districts are like Deer Valley, but we just look at their elementary scores.
Okay. And then for each of those 4 that we're comparing ourselves to, we're going to look at 4 data points.
Correct.
3 through 5, math and ELA, 6 through 8, math and ELA.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's very clear that those are the measurements that we're using for that particular goal, because the proficiency, as we know, is the most publicized numbers that everybody sees. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
And then I think kind of, it was under number 2, but I think it'll go up under number 1. We'll still have our own proficiency goals that we set, like we have done every year for ourselves. And that one, again, we'll do it 3 through 5 and 6 through 8 so that we're consistent in the pattern in which we're following. In looking at number 2, we had decided to not look at the RL and RI, if I'm correct. And we would look at our subgroup comparisons under our DEI goals. So you would have that data and that information as well, but in that context. Just double checking that does that sound right?
Yes, that's my understanding. However, in the usual 3 or 4 times annually data presentations, the subgroup information would still be included in that.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then moving on to benchmarks, we would look at growth in our, again, keeping the same categories 3 through 5, 6 through 8. And we decided to not look at the Acadians or Dibbles data, that piece.
Agreed. We would like to focus on 3 through 5 and 6 through 8.
Okay, in math and ELA, just making sure too that we're consistent on that.
Yes.
Okay, and then I believe that was it on that piece. We looked at attendance rates of being 90% or above.
Yes, and the 90% is based on that is the kind of generally accepted successful attendance rate for elementary schools.
Okay. And then the last piece was the one-to-one implementation. And we're still kind of working through like how will we track it, but basically that every student in 1st through 8th grade is issued a device by December.
And I think we were going to also look at a determination for what does success look like for logins and
Right,
actual utilization. But since we haven't really launched this yet, I'm not sure that we know what that
what that will
is
look
going
like.
to look like, but we'd like to get to some sort of number there to be able to have the data to back it up. I think the only piece that's missing for me from this goal is we also talked
the
about the
PD.
PD accountability
Yes,
part.
you're
Yeah.
right. Yep, so number 6, that would be, I guess, is the PD component.
Do any board members have anything to add or clarify on goal 1?
I have a question, President Moran.
Yeah, I need clarification. On the attendance rate for students, I don't see it on here.
Right, that's where I said that we were going to do 90%
Yeah,
or
I
above.
had it in my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These are just some of the changes that needed to be added into this.
Yeah, so just for some clarification as well, this is really a working document up to a point. The board does not need to vote and approve the measurements. However, we will utilize these measurements when we go to do Superintendent Gunning's evaluation. So we need to be in agreement as to what the measurements should be, but there is a little bit of room and time, I think, for us to determine some of these numbers that we're not quite sure what success looks like. Board Member Clymer, do you have any points of clarification on the measurements for goal 1?
Yes, I just had one question on the timing. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
You just mentioned that this is sort of a working document and we still have some sort of numbers that we need to work out. What is the timing on those numbers? Do we expect growth numbers? Excuse my dog barking.
Superintendent Gunning, what's the timing on those numbers?
So we're still waiting from the state to receive the state data on all districts. So we just haven't received that yet. I'm not exactly sure when that will be coming. And I can't remember last year when we received it, but every year it's a little bit different. So I would anticipate pretty soon, because usually sometime in the August timeframe, we usually know exactly kind of where we're sitting compared to others.
Okay, so is it reasonable to say that 1 month approximately into the school year, we would have solid numbers here and solid measurements?
I would think so. And if something were to change, I could notify you.
Okay, great. Okay, I think we're ready to move on to goal number 2.
So under people, I believe that we spoke about improving the certified retention rate to above 90%. So taking it from 88 to 90. I know we had some debate on that. So let's talk through. I didn't know if we wanted to. We talked about going back to the same percentage that we were pre-pandemic, but I can't remember if 90% was okay with everybody in the end, right? That's what I thought we were at.
Yeah, I mean, I think in academics, we're asking to stretch. And I
Yeah.
think in the employee retention rate, growth is good. But that's my opinion. Board Member Zeidema or Dr. Dowling, do you have any thoughts?
On the 90%,
Mhm.
or
Yes, on the 90% retention rate, certified retention rate as a goal.
at 90% is what I had in my notes. So
Yeah. Perfect.
That's what I had.
Okay, and then for classified would be 75%. And then number 3, we had that employee engagement component stating that links to both of those items and that we would have an overall mean of 4.1 or above. That was matching the score pre-pandemic. Or actually maybe matching last year's score, I think it was.
Okay, I think that is exactly what we discussed in the board retreat for goal number 1 under the people area. Any board member comments or questions on that, or can we move to goal number 2 under people?
I had just
I have
one
a
question on the
question.
retention rates.
Great, thank you, board member Kleiner. Go ahead, Dr. Dowling.
Yeah, I have a question on these measurements. Should they be tied to a specific goal under people? In other words, is it goal number 1, goal number 2? Is number 1 measurement for goal number 1? I'm not seeing a measurement, and we had a lot of discussion about this, about the growth and develop leadership. We struggle with that.
So I think those 1 through 3 should link to goal 1.
Okay, what was that?
The 1 through 3 that you see there should be linked to goal 1. And then we talked about goal 2, linking that to the employee engagement survey, but removing the superintendent components and showing the growth in those by school.
Yeah, so I think actually we discussed measures 1 and 2 having to do with the high retention rate, and we discussed the grow and develop leadership being tied to the employee engagement survey. So I think measurement 3 actually goes with goal 2 based on what we discussed in our retreat. I would like to add something to that. So we have the employee engagement survey overall mean at 4.1 or above. I would like to also add a goal for increased participation in the employee engagement survey. This feedback and information as a measurement is only as good as the number of employees that are giving us the feedback. So last year in 2021, 2022, we only had 403 employees participate, which seems really low to me based on the number of employees that we have. So I don't know what success looks like there, but I would be happy to get board member feedback or get your thoughts, Superintendent, on the number or percentage there that we'd like to see as far as participation. Let me start by asking generally the number of employees that the survey does out. So is that a reasonable number? Is 2/3 a reasonable number? I do not know what success is. I just looked up last year. So we have the whole thing, so like, and the year report was released for online.
It's the same survey for certified.
Yes.
Do we think we need to, do you think we need to end it? And because it's not coming back.
It's not coming back.
Is there another one of these adapters anywhere?
No, I don't have one. What does he say? Turn it off Zoom too.
Okay, we are back. Thank you for your patience with our technical difficulty. I believe Superintendent Gunning was looking up our trends on employee engagement survey so we could come up with a potential measure for success in the participation rate.
So prior to the pandemic, in that, because that first year we took it in the spring and we had 500 participation, and then in the fall we had 612. So I would say an appropriate growth would be 1 to 200 increase in participation so that we're getting back to those pre-pandemic rates.
Okay, I would like to see us have a measurement and argue with me if I'm wrong here, but I think asking 50% seems low to me. And I think I think based on the trend, we're asking for less than 50% of our employees to participate in this. So am I correct in saying that this survey can be filled out while they are working?
Correct.
Okay. Are there some ways we can incentivize employees to fill this out, such as Jeans Day? Nothing that costs money, of course. But if they can fill it out while they're working, and I'm not sure, how long do you think it takes to fill out the survey?
I don't think it takes very long. We have definitely, of course, a lot better participation from school staff because they schedule it. Where it gets difficult is the staff, like transportation and facilities. And even though they always make sure, in food services, where they always make sure that there's a computer available and they have it, it's not necessarily like a scheduled time because they all have such different hours.
Is this, it's online or is it?
It's online. Mhm.
Strictly online?
Yes.
And I think that the board needs to send a percentage. It's up to the superintendent to ensure that it gets done. And that it does go hand in hand with both of the goals, to be honest with you. Retention would be indication of maybe why the retention is lower or higher. And also it would be indication on I think on the leadership at all levels, as goal number 2 indicates. So I would recommend a return factor of about 70%.
Board Member Zaidama, what do you think about?
Excuse me?
I got your percentage 70. Let's hear what Board Member Zaidama thinks percentage wise.
Percentage wise?
Yes, I'm asking Board Member Zaidama what she
I
thinks.
thought you were looking at me.
No problem.
It's only
okay.
3 of us.
Well, I'd love to see 70% return too. That's way higher than we've ever had before. So I would be concerned that that would be difficult to do, but I would say that incentivizing our staff would be a good way to get it done. So
Board Member Clymer.
I would like to see, while I agree with Dr. Dowling that 70% would be amazing, I was thinking more in the 55 to 65 range and working our way up. So I could settle on maybe a 60%, which is still sort of a stretch goal from what we've had before, working our way up to 68, 70, 72, over in the course of years. So I'd like to see us get there. Certainly, I'm not sure we're at a 70 or 75% rate yet, but I think 60 to 65 might be fair.
I would be willing to go with 60%. Again, to Board Member Clymer's point, that is a stretch goal as it is now, and then we can step that up over the years. I know we have put a lot of effort and time into the strategic plan, and these surveys have been a very important part of that. And as I said earlier, I think the feedback that we're getting and the measurements that we're using this for are only as good as the feedback that we're getting. And we need more feedback. 400 out of 1,400 employees just isn't enough. So Superintendent Gunning, do you think with the help of your team, you could come up with a way to get us to a 60% participation rate?
I definitely think we can try. And as we know, if you look in the past, our scores jumped dramatically. So it only benefits us because we were at 4.29 as a success rate with 800 people participating. So the more people participating, our scores tend to increase. So it's only better.
Great, more incentive to get more people.
well, definitely. And also, not just for our stuff, but for our schools, they use this information to come up with goals for what they're going to do for the next year. So therefore, the more input they can have, the better they can know what they need to do in their individual campuses as well.
Okay, so to summarize the measurements for the goal, grow and develop leadership at all levels, we are going to look at the employee engagement survey overall mean at 4.1 or above, excluding the 2 superintendent questions on the survey. And then we're going to aim for a 60% or higher participation rate in the employee engagement survey. Is that everyone's understanding? Any questions or comments on that, on those measurements for that goal? Excellent. Let's move on to our goal for service. Superintendent Gunning?
Yes. So under service, the first thing that we were looking at was performing a communication audit and then developing a communication plan from that audit. Create a consistent timeline for the district for communication of academic progress to our families. And then under strategic actions, also having the director of community relations present the communication plan and kind of the feedback from the audit how he was able to establish that plan to the governing board at a governing board meeting. Then we list in that number 2 of the strategic actions of the actual academic communication timeline that will be consistent across the district as a whole. Some other performance indicators that would be utilized is parent view utilization of greater than 50%, making sure that the communication is timely and consistent, and using multiple forms of communication methods. So being able to show or display the texting, social media, website, email, those pieces. And I think that's everything I have from those. Were there any items I missed under that?
We talked about this earlier, Superintendent Gunning, you and I, on the strategic actions and the performance indicators. I'm still not 100% clear on those and the differentiation. I understand the communication plan being presented to the board is an action related to that goal, but I would like to include in the measurements the parent view utilization. So let me ask a similar question to the employee engagement survey participation rate. Is 50% parent view utilization, meaning 50% of our parents have logged in to parent view and actually used it? Is that success?
I think that's actually pretty good. And all we can show is we can show increase by actions we take to notify them. But whether they actually log in or choose to log in would be, again, up to them. So I think it would be more showing the logins of parent view and the marketing aspects that we've done to increase that.
Okay. The other thing that I had in my notes from Thursday was including relevant questions from the parent satisfaction survey. And there are 2 questions in particular that I think are relevant to the communication. One is the question that says, I regularly receive feedback from school staff on how well my child is learning. And the other question is, I receive positive phone calls, emails, and notes about my child from school. I don't have the historical information at my fingertips on those or what success would look like for those, but I believe that information would be pretty readily accessible. I like having as many data points as possible to be able to determine progress towards a goal. I would also like to make a specific request on the measurements. One measurement I would like reassurance on is that every school across our campus is utilizing texting. So if we could have that as a separate measurement as well. Do any board members have feedback or comments on these communication measurements?
I don't have a question directly, but I think potentially when we see the communications plan and the result from the communication audit, having the words consistent and timely, that can be ambiguous potentially. So I think once we see that plan, we'll be able to potentially have some additional performance indicators from that. But right now, because we haven't seen it, maybe there's a little bit of vagueness there, but I think we can tighten that up, at least that part of it, once we see the communication plan.
Okay, does that seem reasonable, Superintendent Gunning?
Yes. Can we go back to the questions really fast? I'm
Yes.
just trying to make sure I write down the right numbers. Can you say the second question again?
Yes, the question, I received positive phone calls, emails, and notes about my child from school. And that was one of our low scoring ones this past year.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Dr. Dowling, do you have any other feedback on the communication measurements?
I guess my question would be, do we keep track of parent comments or concerns about communication within the school district? Do we keep track? In other words, do we stroke difficult to navigate, not timely? I didn't know about it. The school didn't tell me. Do we get, when we get, do we get feedback from parents, I guess I'm asking, specifically about things that is a barrier for receiving communications?
So one of the things, I mean, we have this employee engagement survey or parent engagement survey, which is more all encompassing. So there's some pieces within that. But one of the things that we're looking at with the audit, and we haven't finalized just yet, is possibly doing a communication survey. So a separate survey to parents,
I would agree.
so that we could see exactly, rather than just assuming that we know which routes and venues that they prefer, but really validating and seeing like, okay, which avenues do they prefer? What struggles or
Exactly.
challenges have they had?
Is this
Those kind
audit
of
going to
things.
address that? Do we know yet?
I think within the audit, it'll be kind of the next step from that audit of doing a survey. And so we were working with them to see like how long does that, how many questions, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think the audit, before we can solidify this, the audit is a critical piece to come back and get the feedback, recommendations, so to speak, from the audit. I am concerned about addressing specifically the barriers that parents are facing. And we need to see if there's a preponderance in certain areas. And through the survey, of course, would help. And then maybe the audit may help somewhat. But that's it.
Is there a timeline for when we can expect to have the information from the audit?
Well, we're still digging through it right now. So we haven't really set a specific timeline. I thought maybe he would present it all encompassing, like here was the audit information and then here was the plan. But we also want to, in the meantime, but before doing the plan, we would like to do the communication survey too, not just designing a plan that we haven't received feedback from our community members.
Okay, so essentially you're saying that the measurements for this communication goal will all need to be a term B measurement because we don't know even what success looks like yet. We don't have the feedback from our parents, and generally the parent survey is done. We don't get those results
January,
back.
February.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'll include that in my notes that really this goal, we will address it in term A, but we really won't be able to measure it until term B.
Yes.
The second semester. Term
Yeah.
B is the second semester of the school year.
I mean, I think you'll be able to see some progress with, the other, like the texting and the emails and that kind of stuff. The academic progress, but I would say term B would be the best time to see an all encompassing of the year.
Okay,
I have a question. Is now a good time to ask?
yes.
I just want to clarify, in terms of the communication plan, I absolutely agree that we should have parent and community involvement in terms of a survey. I'm maybe a little concerned on the timing in terms of, I know our parent survey normally goes out in the spring. If we're talking about waiting on a communications plan until we have survey results, that seems very late in the year to be coming up with a communications plan in the spring when we're starting in August. So I think maybe if we're going to do a separate communication survey to our parents, it needs to be done now so that we can actually take action this year. Otherwise, It would be a next school year project. So that doesn't fit to me with the goal that we set for this year, which is to try and get this done maybe in the first semester.
It would be a separate survey. So that would have to be done in the fall, and we wouldn't want it done simultaneously around the parent survey, the typical engagement survey, because we still want to do that component too. But we don't want survey burnout or them picking one survey over the other. So it would be, to me, imperative that we do that either prior to fall break or just shortly after fall break.
So it sounds to me
My vote would be before fall break. My vote would be as soon as possible.
Go ahead. Sorry, Board Member Clymer, can you please repeat that?
I apologize. I said I would like to see it done as soon as possible prior to spring break, preferably.
Okay, so Board Member Clymer said she would like the communication survey to be done as soon as possible. I don't disagree with that. I do know that, I think what I'm hearing from you is that we have the audit back. We need some time to digest that, put together a communication survey, get that feedback back, digest that, and then put a plan in place that would then be implemented end of first semester, I would say beginning of second semester at the latest, so that then by the time we look at these measurements at the end of the school year, we will be able to measure whether we have been successful in this goal. Does that sound accurate?
Correct.
Okay. Any other board member feedback on this goal and the plan? Okay, then we can move on to our last goal for the year: consistently maintain all resources and facilities.
Okay, so let's make sure that we have all of the components within this one. To develop and implement an improved safety protocols plan with the new director of school safety. Develop a plan for systems analysis. Complete the analysis of one system by June of 2023. And then we had some survey data that we would look at for schools facilities. Is the question: the school is clean and well maintained. The school provides a safe environment for my child. And then also completing an inventory of systems to review. Does that sound like everything?
I would like to add one thing to the survey data. On the student survey, there is also a question that says, "My school is clean." So I'd like to get some student input on that as well.
Okay.
Board Member Dowling, do you have any feedback on the measurements for this goal?
The question you just referred to, are you talking about the student survey?
Yes, on the student survey, there's a question to the students that says, "My school is clean,"
Yeah.
and then they get to rate that. So I'd like to get student feedback on this particular goal, as well as the two questions that Superintendent Gunning listed that are from the parent survey.
Okay, so you're saying that the school is clean and well maintained is a student question.
No, there is a parent question that says the school is clean and well maintained, but that's on the parent survey. On the student survey, there is a question that says, "My school is clean." It's asking the same thing, but you're getting feedback from the parents on one and the student on the other.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm a little bit confused on, it doesn't indicate that. It just says the second question is, "The school provides a safe environment for my child," which means that's the parent question. The one above there is also a parent question?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. So it's not written on here because I just added that because I wanted to make sure the student feedback was included as well.
Yeah, just looking at my notes in the minutes. A lot of this stuff doesn't collate. It could be my notes, but which it probably is.
I think it's probably a combination. Like I said, we did not specifically look at the survey questions during that study session. And so I spent some time going back and looking at those in between to make sure that everything that we could utilize with data points is in fact being utilized.
Understood.
Board members Idema, do you have any feedback?
No, I was going to mention that I wanted the student information as well as the parents, so I'm good with that.
Board member Clymer?
I am good with what's been presented. Thank you.
There's also a safety question we'll add from the student survey too.
Oh, okay, great. And how does that question read, Superintendent Gunning, if you have that up right now?
I feel safe at school.
Okay, perfect, perfect. Okay, so we'll have 2 student questions and 2 parent questions for measurements. Anything else that any board members would like to add on the specific measurements? Superintendent Gunning will work on updating this document and include that in Friday update. And then Superintendent Gunning and I will work on the evaluation tool. We have a spreadsheet that we use individually as board members when it comes time to do the evaluation for Superintendent Gunning, and I will update that based on these measurements and ensure that that is ready to go for our mid-year review. A couple of other things that we can discuss. Board members Idema, I believe, has a question on the performance goals.
Specifically as it pertains to the performance pay at the end of the year. Last year, we just kind of broke it up. Like each point got a percentage. I think there was 6 or 5 that we broke it down. And so I'm wondering if we can this time decide that this percentage is going to go to this goal versus this percentage will go to this goal. Because I think that all of us agree that her first goal is our most important goal. And so I would like to tie most of the performance pay to that goal, if we can do that.
Okay, so just for clarification, the board does an evaluation of Superintendent Gunning's performance. We evaluate her leadership skills, and we also evaluate her performance as it relates to the strategic plan, which are in this case, the 5 goals that we're setting tonight. So we will evaluate her at mid-year, and that is more informational, kind of a progress report, if you will, as that would be compared with our students. And then we evaluate at the end of the year, and there is a bonus or performance pay that is tied to those measurements. And we have the discretion to divvy that up, if you will, how we determine, but we need to make sure that it is upfront and clear as to how that performance pay will be determined. Board member Idema is suggesting that we tie a higher percentage to goal number 1. Historically, we would say you have 100% available to give. There are 5 goals. Each goal gets 20%. But it sounds like, board members Idema, do you have any suggestion as to how much you'd like to tie to goal number 1?
I would like to see at least 50% going to goal number 1.
Okay, and then the rest equally allocated?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Dowling, do you have any feedback on that?
Yes, I agree that it should be weighted. And my recommendation is very simple. It's academic student success 40%, 20, 20, 20 for the other 3.
Okay. Board member Clymer.
I'm not prepared to have this conversation. I apologize. I didn't have a workup in terms of actual percentages for each one, but I think I'm more in alignment with Dr. Dowling on his percentages. I'm not sure how that would work in terms of the people goal. There's 2. I don't know if we break them up and have 10% for each, or if we need to be weighted if we did 20 in each category. I think we could probably work that out, but otherwise, I am in agreement basically with that outline.
So
How do you
Pres-
feel?
Oh, I was going to say, President Moran, we
Yes.
have this on the agenda for the next August, what is that, August 9th meeting? So and it's, so just to think about that piece, because it's info and discussion right now. So
Yeah, we're just
don't-
getting feedback so we can have, we won't do any voting or anything on this tonight, obviously, but this does fall under the agenda as it is related to the approved superintendent performance-based compensation goals. But yeah, so we can think about this. We don't have to make a decision tonight. We can think about that and come back to the August 9th meeting prepared to make a call.
I have one additional question. Will we have all of the measures, specifically the percentage increases and comparison data for goal number 1 by August 9th?
No, we likely won't have the information to be able to compare ourselves to the state or the peers for the proficiency by then. Is that correct, Superintendent Gunning?
correct. I mean, if we do have it, we'll definitely share it, but
Board Member Clymer, are you suggesting that we delay the determination of the performance goal payout percentages until we have finalized measurements?
No, not necessarily. I think we can still determine the weight that we want the goals to have without having those specific measurements. I just don't. I just want to keep that top of mind that, we need to make sure that we are in agreement on what those measures are. If we're weighting them and it seems like we're going all of the way to almost to the end, I don't want us to forget that we need to review these specific measurements, because if we don't have stretch goals and we're doing basically what we did last year, it kind of messes up the idea of weighting one higher than the other when, we're not really following through all the way. So.
Agreed. We will follow through and ensure that all of the measurements are given specific percentages for success. Thank you for holding us accountable, and I will do my best to do the same. Anything else related to tonight's discussion on the performance-based compensation goals? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I motion to adjourn.
I will second. All those in favor?